welcome to All Things Indian Friendly Voices. This is episode 6. Today we are going to discuss freelancing in India. So, I don't know what is freelancing is. It's getting more and more confused. Earlier, freelancing means writers and some kind of people who illustrate, sketch. Those people used to be called as freelancers. They are not employed somewhere. And then they used to do priority on a particular basis, like either item-wise basis or whatever. So, or they work for a week. And then later, what I came across was a period of time, people who used to do multiple jobs per day, just for financial reasons, they were called freelancers. Or everybody else were called, as in my time at least, when I grew up, they're called contractors. But even today, freelancers, account people, they are another separate species. The chartered accountants call even the freelancers as contractors. Okay. Over and all these things, but today we are having web developers, testers, almost everybody who is not employed in a company is called as a freelancer. Well, I don't know what is freelancing, how to define freelancing. Now, all self-employed people are also called nowadays as freelancers. And also there is a, recently, maybe in the IT field, we are getting to hear the term unemployable. Oh, they are calling themselves as all those unemployable persons. Actually, in all other fields, if you're unemployable, it's a derogatory term. I don't know how these people take pride in that, and they are also called freelancers. Or at least those people call it. Somebody says, "I'm doing freelancing." What do you do freelancing? I do freelancing program. Okay, I don't know. So we don't know. So to discuss all these things, through more light on what freelancing is and what is the scenario in freelancing in India, we have two wonderful friends here with us.
Yeah, thanks, Rajmohan. And today I welcome two of our good friends. One, Ranjani Krishnakumar, and other is Milinta. And we'll call her Millie for short. So let me introduce both of them. Ranjani is a multifaceted personality, I can call. She is a writer. She's a marketer. And she's also a film critic or a film reviewer, as she calls herself. And her unique selling point, the USP, is that she's one of the few who goes and watches bad movies. And so that's been something which is unique to her. And, if there's any bad movie running in town, you would be sure that she's watched. She is also an advice giver to those who seek advice. And she's been doing an excellent job in the recent past, where she has rewritten a lot of people's resumes, helping them in their job search in these times. And she says she's a compulsive chips eater. I thought there's only one type of chips eater anyway. That's a compulsive one, right? And other than this, she runs 3 companies. One company called M-Dash, others Tarkuri, and the third one, which she started recently, The Whole Works. These 3 companies, when she is not doing work for them, she's worrying about why she's not doing work for them. That's her current state of affairs, right? And you can reach her in her account on Twitter called Tarkuri. And she's also, The Whole Works is also there on Instagram, both of which you can contact her. Next, coming to Milinta. Millie has been a software developer with HCL initially. After that, she did her MBA and then went on to work in the manufacturing segment, where she was a production manager for almost 8 years. So after that, she quit that job to start her freelancing career. She's basically into language training. So she does training, she does content development, and she consults on language related issues. And she's been doing that for the last 2.5 years. And she's been working for around 5 different organizations now. So with these 2 people, we have one like Ranjani, who's gone through a long journey from freelancing to starting something on her own, to Millie, who's young in freelancing, like she's just there about 2.5 years. So we'll get different perspective on what is happening in this industry, how they are coping with the challenges, what are the opportunities available, and so on. As usual, to start the conversation, I'll ask Raj Mohan to begin. Raj Mohan, up to you.
Yeah. So Ranjani and Nili, welcome to the show. And thanks for being here. Yeah, it's great to have both of you here. And those who are wondering why I'm eating this all throughout the show. And Millie had a birthday 2 days ago, and today I'm having Mysore Pak.
Yeah.
And, okay, now I'll start with Ranjani and Millie. First of all, what is this? Suppose somebody, Mukesh Ambani, he's not working for anybody. He has established his own company. Okay. If you're not working in a particular firm or establishment or institution, is that a criteria or a definition boundary for a freelancer? What is freelancing first? And I don't know whether Ranjani, you worked anywhere before coming here, starting your own thing. You started doing freelancing. If at all, why did you people leave? These are the two questions to begin with.
Okay, thank you, Raj Mohan. The way I think of freelancing is sort of like the antithesis of salaried employment. So as long as you're not on salaried employment, which includes all your basic and PF and gratuity and all of that, right? Everything that comes under the salaried employment bucket, say income taxes, salaried employment bucket, I think of as freelancing. So there are various kinds, right? Artists, designers, writers, but also marketing consultants, communication consultants, people who just come and do 1 or 2 workshops, trainers. While freelancing has taken a new form today, like even the cinema, people like people, light men, and all of them are in freelance engagements only. So when there is work, they do the work, and when there is not work, they don't. Like some of these have unions, and unions kind of distribute work at some points, but in some places they don't. I think of freelance as kind of the opposite of salaried employment. There's no commitment on the side of the employer to give you a certain amount of work. Just the same way, there's no commitment from the freelancer side to have to be available for that particular client. And different freelance engagements work very differently. You could be on a retainer and therefore have to be available. You could charge by the hour, you could charge by the output. So freelancing in itself is not a singular thing. There are various kinds. But in essence, as long as you're not associated on a monthly salary with a firm, I think of it as freelancing. Now, I have had experience in the past working for a firm on salaried employment. I've had like 2-3 jobs in the beginning of my career. And one fine morning, I was called into the office room of my employer, and I was unceremoniously fired. And that's how I became a freelancer, right? I had jumped a couple of jobs in the last year, and I looked at my CV and it looked terrible. It looked like, who will hire me? So I sort of took what at that point I thought was the least risk for my next employer. So I said, you don't even have to hire me. Just give me the work, I will do. That's kind of how I started freelancing. But as I continued freelancing, I realized I absolutely loved it. There was no unreasonable contract. There was no cranky boss I had to take care of. There was I could take whatever leave I want. I could say no to work that doesn't feel right to me. So it gave me the freedom to do what the hell ever I wanted. But it also allowed me to do all the other things, right? I was already writing about films. I was already interested in becoming a professional writer, commenting on films. And it sort of gave me that opportunity to do everything that I wanted. I never really wanted to do one thing. I wanted to do multiple things. And I had that opportunity as a freelancer, so I just stuck to it. That's my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I think my journey into freelancing started more out of necessity rather than anything else. because as much as we didn't want to make this a women thing, I think there is a certain set of unique challenges that only women face when they try to pursue a career, or when they actually try to have a career, especially in our country. Because the primary majority of caregivers in our country are women, and too many of them don't have affordable childcare support, that allows them to go to work for about 8 hours a day and 10 traveling to and fro. They don't have a support system behind them to support that kind of a career. So for me, it was a combination of two things. One, that I was looking to completely shift for a career shift. So I was in manufacturing for quite a long period of time, and then I was looking to enter education. But for various reasons, I found that to be more sustainable. I found that to be something that I wanted to do long term. So when I started looking at options in education, I would have personally preferred to work full time. But at that point of time, I couldn't afford to. I needed a flexible work timing. I needed that sort of flexibility to work around the time that I had. And even now, that always has remained a constraint for me. So then I was wondering, should I see a lot of women in the same place, which is why I'm bringing this up now. You think, okay, should I just put my career on the back burner then? Should I just take a break for a couple of years? Should I just wait for my child to grow up? All those sort of considerations, I don't think men have to even think of. It doesn't even come into the picture. It's taken for granted that men are going to focus on their careers. So at that point of time, that's when when I looked at education options in education and what I can do to have a career without having to work full time. That's when I sort of stumbled into freelancing. In fact, before 2016, I don't even think I knew that a term called freelancing existed. I didn't even know that there was something of that sort. So when I started exploring what I could do to have a career, to continue to have a career, that's when I started thinking about freelancing. And I felt like that was perfect for me at that point of time. I could tailor make a career according to what I had, according to my considerations and according to my restraints. So that's how my journey into freelancing started, out of necessity, I would say.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
That's
basically,
a good one. Yeah.
Just, 1 second, Suresh, before let me understand this.
Yeah, please.
Basically, the freelancer is one who is not salarially employed somewhere.
Correct.
That's how I see it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, then it goes back to my question. Is Mukesh Ambani a freelancer?
He's an entrepreneur, so a different question.
He's an entrepreneur.
Right? What is the difference between entrepreneur and...
he owns a business, right?
I can answer that question. Yeah. I can answer that question. Typically, freelancers tend to work for themselves with no help from other people to do anything for them. Okay. They're not, for one, they're solo proprietorship establishments. So they're not registered as a partnership or a private limited company or something like that. That's one consideration. The second consideration is they typically work by themselves, doing all the work themselves, which includes accounting, tax, payments, bills, sales, marketing, website maintenance. So typically a freelancer does all the work themselves. They might hire other freelancers to do some specialized thing, but mostly they're on their own. And the services they offer are typically what one individual can do.
Okay, I mean, that's very interesting because it brings to my mind some couple of years ago, I heard first time an agency called freelance agency. I mean, what do these people do? What do these freelance agencies do? I mean, do they hire a lot of freelancers and keep on pushing jobs to freelancers?
Yeah, something like that can happen.
I haven't heard of a...
Yeah, so freelance agency is something, for example, even security services are generally these days operate as freelance agencies. So they hire a lot of people, housekeeping, security, or they hire people. They have a roster of people on hand. And as and when organizations come to them, they push these people for work on an hourly basis. Yeah, so these people are not salaried employees with the specific organization, but they are on an hourly based freelance assignment. And
Okay.
it's for a fixed period of time. If they do have a contract or a retainer or anything of the sort, it's for a fixed period of time, after which they'll have to go back and renew the whole thing.
Okay.
And that's what the agency basically acts as a liaison between the organization and the freelancer.
Freelancers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
basically,
Also-
exploitation of labor in the name of freelancing.
freelancing.
You don't have to give them any
Yes,
benefits and things.
Also to
I
add,
was about to tell that. Yeah.
Also, to add to what Ranjani was saying and your question, all business owners, as for example, all freelancers are not business owners. So, for example,
Correct.
Ranjani is a business owner, but I am a freelancer who's associated with multiple organizations. I don't run my
Correct.
own business or own my own business. So a business owner does not automatically become a freelancer.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
there are multiple ways to look at it.
Sure. Another thing which I think most people who want to get into freelancing would like to know is what my next question is. For example, nowadays, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to tell people that, you have quit your well-paying IT job. And then, then they'll ask you, oh, what did you do after that? Then you have to say, I picked up another well-paying IT job, right? You can say that, but it's like me, right? I'm a freelancer, but I quit a well-paying IT job to be still in IT. The thing is that what I'm saying is quitting a job looks romantic to many people, and taking up your passion and all these are standard discourse nowadays, right? You hear this all the while. I want to go travel everywhere, and Calvin and Hobbes had one cartoon that says as he's traveling everywhere, fine, but who's buying his shoes for him, right?
Yeah.
So this is another thing. So one of the biggest concerns when you shift out from a corporate job where you get a regular salary, one of the concerns is obviously the finance concern, right? And when I quit and took up my job on my own as a freelancer, everybody has the same question: what will you do for the money? Or like the Americans like to ask, how do you put food on the table, right? So these sort of concerns are there. That's one concern. You may have many concerns. So let me start with Millie and ask her. So when you were quitting a job, even whether it's out of necessity, what were the major concerns that you had, and how did you handle it, or how are you still handling it?
I would definitely say that I'm still handling it. I'm handling it on a daily basis. But like you said, the first and foremost concern would be the lack of a salary, because I had worked full time for a long period of time. So I was used to the salary being credited into my account on this particular day, a particular amount coming into your account. Yeah. So when even before I stepped into freelancing, that was one thing that kept holding me back. So what am I going to do if I won't even know how much money I'm going to make the next month or the month after that. So how is this going to work? So that was a very big concern. And the second concern was job security, because there is absolutely no sense of job security in freelancing. You may have a really great project today, you may be working on it today, and then once that's over, then what? You're going to have to go looking for your next project, and then the next. So it's an unending cycle of looking for work, right? So you cannot be like you cannot be complacent at any point. So that was my next biggest concern. And the third concern, at least personally for me, was that there is, even now it still continues to be a concern, the fact there is very less scope for any sort of career growth. So for example, when I started freelancing, I worked with a really great organization, and which employed both full-time trainers and consultants and freelance consultants. We did the exact same things at work. We worked for almost the same number of hours. We had the same trainings and meetings. We had the exact same very, very stringent performance appraisal. But at the end of all of this, they could climb up the ladder. They had promotions, they had increments, they had benefits coming in, but we had nothing. So that is sort of very demoralizing and demotivating, especially if you're very ambitious. If you're really ambitious about your work, then it's sort of, where am I going with this? That feeling sort of tends to creep in. So first 1 year was really difficult for me, but I think now I sort of have found ways to work around this. I'm still dealing and grappling with this on a daily basis, but now I can handle it better. I think those were my major concerns.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, Ranjani.
Challenges-wise, I think my first concern was money. And I'm not asking about money in terms of what will I do, but more in terms of why does this pay so badly, right? I started my career as somebody who worked for 50 paise a word, 1 rupee a word kind of thing. So just to pay rent and eat food, I would have to write like 25,000 words. That is more than 1,000 words a day, right? And it is exhausting. It's not something that you can produce good work. So the earliest challenges I faced was that it wasn't even, you had to do a significant amount of work to make reasonable amount of money. And the second thing was also that you were treated just like you're worth 1 rupee a word, right? Like my mother used to say, "Onnala moone mukkal rupaa da sambadhikka mudiyum." That moone mukkal is like what rubbish is this type, right? Yeah. So this freelance was very moone mukkal raw for me, just 3 3/4 rupees worth. So every time you speak to somebody, right, they treated you like, oh, you're just a freelance writer. Like you're just a writer, you're just a junior person. Like I remember this person that I met, right? He called me for a meeting, and it was kind of like a little bit, he had a little bit of a creepy reputation. So and he asked me to come on a Sunday. So I took my now husband, then boyfriend, and went, right? And he was talking to me like, you know what, you come here, I will tell you what I need, you take notes, and then you transcribe that, and then make something out of it. And I was like, I don't know, like, I don't know how to react to that, right? So they will treat you like you're only worth that much. And that to me was a big barrier. And also, secondly, at that point, there were a lot of these agencies who would get work from big companies and hire out. And they would have sold itself for 2 rupees a word. So they would want us to work at 50 paise a word, but there will be about 500 back and forth with so much lost in translation. Somebody would have said AWS, this person would have been like, hey, that's Amazon something. And then you're researching Prime Video because, you know, something. And then you write a beautiful article about Prime Video and they are like, are you an idiot? Right? So a lot of my time and energy was going into making very, very little money. That was one. The second thing was also, I think especially in my very early days, like 2013, 2014, my God, I met so many sexist thugs. Like I remember going to the meeting, and like it was a very good meeting, right? Those guys come back from the US and play golf, and there is that mini playing golf on the carpet type thing. And in his office, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so cool. But then at the end of the meeting, I say, I'll send you the first draft, but don't worry about it. Before it becomes final, I will ask my proofreader to check it, and then you can publish a final version. And he's like, oh, you have a proofreader? I said, of course I have a proofreader. I'm a professional. And he was like, oh, I thought you were doing it as a hobby. Your husband was at a nice organization, no? And I was like, I've spent a lot of time in my early years where I'm just stumped at what people say. And there's a lot of sexism. And I've also noticed that I was very thin and I still am very short. So I sort of looked like a very young person at that point. So they would also condescend to you. Like there'll be this 50-year-old man who's sitting across the table and acting like, ha, come manage my social media. I am too old for this. You children should be better at it, no? Like that. And I'm like, Uncle, I'm not
Uncle, please sit.
I'm naturally young and good at it. I do it because I learned how to do it.
Yeah.
It's that was, I don't think that is unnatural. I think that happens at salaried employment as well. And sexism and condescension, like ageist condescension, is normal. But at that point, because I was on my own and trying to do this on my own, I had to develop a system where I handle all of this and still manage to come out with the respect that I think I command in that environment. So that I think was initially tough. Now, of course, nobody condescends.
Okay. That puts into my mind two things. One is pandemic-related unemployment. In that unemployment induced freelancing. That we'll come to that later. Okay. Now, what both of you are telling is all this. It also means perceptions play a large part in a freelancer getting a thing. Okay. For example, okay, I mean, Melinda, you may not know. Jokingly, I told Ranjani one day, she asked, can I apply? I mean, she asked something. Okay. Now, I'm a person in opposite to what she was telling. From the age of 20, I look like this. I'm not saying I mean, I always tell people that when I went for my first job, there was when HR guy came and asked me, sir, has your brother come with you to join? I said, why should my brother come? I have come for join work here. Okay. That kind of, that even appearances play a huge role. And when I say appearances, it also means how to suppose I decide, okay, now I have aged parents, I want to give up my job. Okay, good or bad, I want to go back and I want to look after them. So how do I go about getting a job? How will you people go around and getting a job? I mean, because Melinda raised a very important point. Woman, I mean, does it give additional challenge for a woman freelancer to get a job?
Job in the sense, I think what Rajmohan means is
any contract, any work,
How do you get work? Yeah.
How do I get work? I didn't seek work out at all, ever. It always came to me. But that's because I am, by nature, I'm very social. I am very happy to talk about my work. I'm very happy to discuss my failures. Like, everybody knows something about me. And I'm active on social media as well. So in the beginning, the first 3-4 years, almost 100% of my work came from people who I knew through Twitter. So my initial days were, all the work was through either social media or people I knew, like old colleagues, somebody, I was working with somebody, they moved and went to another firm, they invited me over. Last year, we went after one client because I thought they were a premier brand to have on our portfolio. But other than that one customer, until today, everybody else is either inbound or referred.
Okay.
I mean, Rajan, how do you mean? For example, you have shared the work history of yours with the people. That is your way of getting the job. Okay, but there may not be a million people who may not be as articulate as you are, but they have to seek a job, right? Get some work, right?
Yeah, so I think
I think they have to just learn to become articulate, because that's the way this works. Freelancing is not just about, like, say you're a wedding photographer. You might be a fantastic wedding photographer, but if you can't sell yourself, you will be a fantastic unemployed wedding photographer.
Okay, now I asked your job. Why did you refuse?
Because you're not qualified.
You're not qualified. Why? Anyway, sorry.
Publicly, I'm happy to do it.
He's overqualified.
Overqualified, okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I think Millie would have would know the other challenge where you actively try seeking out. Yeah, Millie.
Yeah, of course. For me, it's been the exact opposite. Also, when I started out, for me, it was also an extra challenge because I completely changed careers. And I had just started, I was just qualified to start working in education, to start teaching, to start developing content. But I had absolutely no work experience. So nobody would hire me. So I remember when the first 6 months, thankfully, I was still holding on to my full-time job at that point of time, because I didn't want to give it up before I found any freelance assignments. I have applied to every single organization in Chennai. I had a full 3-page list to which I sent out resumes, I made calls, I did all of those things, but nothing ever came out. Because at that point, there was no credibility to my work. There was no credibility in my resume, because I didn't have that amount of, a repertoire to show to my organizations or clients. That was really difficult. For 6 months, I think I really struggled. And also, I should add here that I'm the very opposite of Ranjani. I have zero networking skills. I am on Twitter if and when I feel like it. I talk to people if and when I feel like it. So I was totally not prepared for that at that point of time. But luckily, I found a small breakthrough. And I was able to enter into an organization for not for what I was qualified. I was grossly overqualified for that. But at that point of time, because I was just entering the field, I was okay to take it. I thought, okay, let me just start with this, and then let me show them what I can do. Let me then show them that I have the potential, and let's see how it goes. So for a while, for about 6 months, I juggled both my full-time assignments and my freelance assignments for up to 6 to 8 months. I was working full-time. I would rush back in the evenings to do my freelance assignments. I would do it during the weekends. Just because I wanted to have a foothold there. So work doesn't always come to you easily at all. But then after 8 months, I moved to a better position, better profile and the role within the same organization that could put a lot of things on my resume. And from then on, it became easier to find work. And by then, I was also a little bit savvy enough to know that you have to network. So I would, like Ranjani said, I would completely agree with her on that. You need to be at least professionally. You don't have to do it personally, at least professionally. You should be able to put yourself out there. LinkedIn, I surprisingly, when COVID hit, I'm sure we're talking about that in detail later, but when COVID hit, I started dusting out my resume, and I even spoke to Ranjani for had a conversation with her about it. And then surprisingly, every single person that I approached via LinkedIn for work, always got back to me. I didn't even expect that. They always got back. They were willing. But imagine, had I just been sitting at home doing nothing, that wouldn't have come to me at all. I even wallowed on Twitter and found a project. Actually, Suresh helped me with a project because I wallowed on Twitter so much. It's like, okay, hey, why don't you talk to this person? He put me in touch with her, and I found work like that.
Melinda, that means both of them are cheating me. Okay, I have been searching for a job. They haven't given me one. Okay, I will remember this. Imagine this so very cold. Okay. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So that's, I found something like that. So like that, I've been able to find work, and now after working for about 2 years, I have enough on my resume. So when I go to a potential organization or a client, they have a lot of confidence that I will be able to deliver what I want, because I can show it to them. I have proof for that. So once you have that sort of repertoire, it becomes a lot more easier to find work. Yeah, until then it is a struggle. It is a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I before I ask the next question, I'll just put in my experience also here, because it goes along very similar ways like Milinda. My freelancing is in 2 phases. So first 3 years I did one, and then I started one small company which we couldn't get funding, so I went back to a job, and then I started. So the first time when I did freelancing, I did like what Ranjani was saying, like sit in the home and things come from people I know, otherwise nothing. I never thought of building a brand for myself. But the next time I said, no, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my career. So right from the beginning, I put up a company name. I'm still the sole proprietor, but I have a company name. I have a good presence on LinkedIn. I started writing my blogs, right? And as you said, the first 2 years were very patchy. You don't know when what will come. But after 2 years, right, it's like I keep getting from very regular things. So I know that till next month, I'm okay. The third month, there's nothing, but I know something will come, right? Because people started knowing you on their own rather than you going in. But it is important, as Ranjani said, for any freelancer to develop that skill of telling people what they are doing, because nobody will know otherwise. You may know that you are a great person, but you don't need to. And there's a big problem with many of, especially technical guys who are very good, very false notion that marketing means lying about yourself. They say, why should I market? I'm such a great guy. So I keep telling them, it's not about you being a great guy. You just need to tell what you did. That's all. You don't need to polish it up or something else that you had done this. People need to know. Otherwise, they won't give you a job. Right? Anyway, coming back to the other thing, another important thing that I think both of you would have experienced is doing freelancing also depends a lot on the environment, in the sense that are the companies ready to hire freelancers? And as Ranjani said, do they give the respect to freelancers? For example, if you are a good technical person in the US, and I have quite a few friends there who quit their jobs and are freelancers, and they get $250 per hour, and they are like living a very good life, as good as what you would be in a company, and they are having all the free time, everything. So my question to you would be, what's that status in India, right? I'll have two parts of the question. One is, how do you see companies in India? Are they more, what I would call friendly towards freelancers, more willing to employ them for their works? And second, uh, which areas do you think freelancing seems to be working better in India?
Okay.
Yeah.
So to start off with the first question, are companies more open? I think now they actually are. In a lot of fields, they are. And I wouldn't say it's because they want to help freelancers or give freelancers more work. It's more out of convenience. Organizations find working with freelancers these days a lot more convenient than even hiring full timers, because in a way we are saving them a lot of money. They're not paying us any benefits, they're only paying us by the hour. So all of that convenience has made employers or organizations look towards freelancers and hire more freelancers. So that's one thing that's aiding freelancers as much as it does sound a little bit very sad, but that is true. It's not out of any altruism that they're doing that, but it's purely because they find it very convenient to have freelancers in their
easier to
repertoire.
exploit.
Easier to exploit, yeah. So which areas are more receptive? I feel I can speak for myself when I say education seems to be a field which is really, really receptive to freelancing right now. Because there are a lot of, it's not just one solid area where you can enter. There are a lot of horizontals into which you can enter. For example, training or teaching is just one horizontal. You can go into content development, you can go into digital content development, you can consult, or you can, for example, there's a lot of scope for business communications itself, business training. Kids education is a whole different and huge market altogether. So all of these horizontals have a lot of scope. So I feel that, and also I've heard from my friends and from other people's experiences that marketing consultancy, marketing does accept a lot of people into freelancing. Event management accepts a lot of people into freelancing. So all these areas are some of the few areas that I know. But is there one interesting thing that I've noticed is that in education specifically, there is a reverse gender bias where people think it's easier to find work if you're a woman. I don't know how that is or why that is. For instance, when I lost my job, when I lost my only project due to COVID, and I was looking out for work, there was a guy from my previous organization who put me in touch with a lot of other organizations. And he said, he gave me he was very encouraging, he was very motivating and all of that. And at the end, the tail end of the conversation, he ends by saying, "Oh, but you are a woman and you look nice, so you should be able to find work. It should be easy for you." I was like, okay. I didn't know that this was a criteria, but okay, thank you. You did. So there seems to be that. So men tend to think, at least in education, that women have it very easy, and I don't know why that is. But in terms of overall acceptance, I think now there is a boom, and in terms of also online education, things have become actually better for freelancers, I think, right now, because this condition seems to be long term and does have a long term impact, right? So in terms of my field, I think there is definitely scope for freelancers right now.
Okay. I've always had Indian clients. Ever since 2013, I've had Indian clients. Though in the beginning, there were more US clients who kind of paid in dollars. But now, apart from one client, who is actually the global arm of an Indian client of mine, I have no foreign clients at all. Like, all of them are Indian clients and all of them pay very good money. I'm not talking about like reasonable money. I'm talking about good money. So I think Indian companies have been and are open to accepting freelancers. They always have been. I think there is this, like she said, the idea of not having to give benefits. You can hire whenever, fire whenever, just get work done for like 1 month or 2 months and not have to worry about onboarding and stuff. And also a lot of freelancers tend to be like, we were talking about quitting the job and becoming a freelancer, right? So these are people who have experience already. who can be onboarded quite quickly, as against hiring a fresher and training them, right? But you're still paying fresher salary. For instance, you say, oh, but you're just a freelancer. I will put you on a 20,000 a month retainer. And as a freelancer, you're thinking, my God, I have 20,000 rupees fixed income that is coming. But that guy is making you do like
40,000.
even if you tried, you can't do lower quality work, right? Like you have experience, you have the intuition to understand a few things that you can't not have. So that, so in that sense, I think Indian companies have, even though some Indian companies have been cheap, receptiveness has always been there. But what I've realized over time is that not everything can be freelanced, right? Like for instance, I used to work for a small and medium business. They needed a marketing person, right? So I kind of went on like a part-time type engagement with them. But I realized that freelance works best when you can break your time and energy into small chunks and deliver. If I have to have, let's say I am the marketing person and I'm getting writing done by somebody, editing done by somebody, design done by somebody, development done by somebody, a lot of my time goes in coordination, planning, follow-up, and not really sitting down and doing the writing work, right? So when you do that, it becomes very difficult to break your time into pockets to assign to each client. So therefore, I would think that freelance is best if it's a job that can automatically be broken into smaller deliverables, or you can find a way to break it into smaller deliverables. And that way, like say if it's writing, I know that I have to write a certain article and give a client, so it's easier. Or if it is development, it is one project, and once the project is over, it's easier. But if it has to be, like, I don't know if you can hire, let's say, a freelance CTO for a company or a freelance operations head for a hospital, right? So I think naturally stuff where you need to be there is not suitable for freelancing. And I also think, where the opportunity is and where M-Dash particularly is doing great work, M-Dash is my firm for those of you who don't know, is in very, very specialized high-end work. So there'll be an organization that wants you to do consulting for an extremely niche project, but they want consulting only for 2-3 months. So they can't afford to hire, like you can't pay 1 crore and hire somebody to do just that kind of work. So they're willing to pay good money. Like they will pay, I don't know, maybe 1 crore for that 3 months time, because you'll go away in 3 months and they don't have to worry about hiring, benefits, firing, severance pay, all of that. In addition to the fact that skill is very, very niche. You're not going to, walk down MG Road and drag somebody and make them do the job. So I think niche skill is very, very important. And if you have it, you are golden.
Oh,
or if you
great.
can develop it, you're golden.
Yeah, I can only, I'll make one comment here, not about this, that you can see that Ranjani's heart is still in Bangalore because she said go down MG Road, not Mount Road, right? So
yeah. So,
though she is now in Chennai.
A couple of things. Again, we are going back to what they are telling is about perceptions. Okay, except 2 countries. So far as I know, 2 countries. One is Japan, another is Germany. Okay, except these 2 countries, everywhere there is a perception that in government offices, freelancers are preferred. Okay, why? They do the work and they don't need to worry about it. For 6 months, 1 year, whatever time, 3 months, 6 months, they will go away. And this kind of bias has come towards many private companies across the world, not only here. In fact, there are firms which I know that there was a friend of mine called Brett Carlson. Okay, he said he will take contract to do physical work, all of the physical work. Okay, lay a road, put up plumbing, everything, construct a building, everything. He will do this. He will hire only freelancers for everything. He will assemble all of them and deliver the product. Wait for about 2 weeks, then okay, that's all. No need to establish a firm, And in there, below particular grade, you have to pay salary and tax on Friday evening at 6 o'clock. All this headache is not for him. He will give something, he will give some X, Y, Z, that's it, finished, matter over. Again, this another thing which Melinda said, there is a bias. I mean, it's even in Germany. Women are good in teaching, especially in schools and colleges. I don't know why it is there. Even when they are looking for teachers freelancing, they prefer women more than men for a specific particular thing. Like, for example, you need to give a training in communication in a company, in a corporate world also, across the world, across the countries, they prefer women. I don't know why. Despite the fact that there is a huge gender in terms of pay, when it comes to pay gap, there is a huge gender divide is there. But okay, now that is for perception. Again, we'll come to the end of that when we are talking about, when I said we'll discuss that later. Now, Ranjani, that you tell me, if I want to, okay, I want to give up. Okay, now I start freelance. Okay, I get 1, 2, 3, 4 contracts. And there are other persons who are young, who are also starting. And there are persons like Melinda who is already 3 years experience or something like that. So, what one has to do, irrespective of what, how much experience you have in freelancing, what one should do to grow here as a freelancer, is it same as when you're working as a salaried person?
I'll answer that in 2 parts. So first I'll talk about what are the growth paths. Typically, there are 2 growth paths. One is you move as an individual towards delivering higher and higher value work. Therefore, you're still an individual, but you charge a significantly higher amount than the next person who's not as experienced. I'm thinking somebody like Karthik Srinivasan, Beast of Trolls. Not to say that he charges, I don't know what he charges, but to say that because of his kind of experience, he does leadership consulting, workshops for CEOs, CXOs, that kind of work. So you can grow into still being an individual, being a freelancer, but delivering higher value work, therefore charging more money. That's one kind of growth. The other kind of growth is what I am doing. Grow it into an agency and therefore a firm. So deliver the growth in terms of value will be slower, but volume will be higher. So what happens is you hire young people, you train them, you teach more people to do the kind of work you do. So if you've been writing 10 articles as an individual, you'll probably write 12 and a half as 4 people team, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That was a joke that didn't land.
Oh,
Okay.
that was a joke. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, of course, we can all see that later. Okay. No, that means you please hire me. I can do 10 people jobs. I can write easily 10,000 words. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Completely went way above my head.
Yeah, I think.
If you're writing 10 articles as a freelancer, you will write 12 and a half articles as a 4 people team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But my problem was that is the reality I've seen. Therefore, I thought you were talking about reality.
Exactly.
That's not a joke, right?
It's funny because it's real.
Exactly. Because I just to interject, sorry to disturb your thought. There was once a project of 10 people where my close friend was the project manager. He told 2 people and he told them, you come to the office, morning to evening, Google whatever you want. Don't touch a line of code in the project. Right? And the project went on time. He said if these guys have touched a piece of code, it would not have gone on time. Right?
Okay. No, I've also had the experience of paying people whose work I had to redo entirely. Right?
Yeah,
so
go ahead. Sorry.
I think. So the point I was making is that that's another way to grow. Grow it as an agency. So if you like it to work with people, train people, pass on to the next generation of people, then that's one way to grow. But if you like to do it yourself, then you can do higher value work, and that's another way to grow. However, there is a limit to which you can grow this way. there is a certain, there's only so much money you can make, and it will take a lot longer for you. Like say, if you go from marketing assistant to marketing deputy manager, marketing manager to marketing director, the salary growth will be higher and kind of easier than spending the same 10 years as a freelancer and commanding that kind of jump in salary.
Right.
So in terms of the trade-off between money and experience and the other considerations that you have in life and what means to you, you can pick one of these two ways to go.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Melinda?
very succinctly put, I would say.
Melinda, what do you think? Just quickly.
I completely agree with Ranjani on what she says.
Oh, yeah.
I think she very comprehensively spoke about it. And one thing that I would like to add is, like I mentioned earlier in one of your questions, if there are horizontal opportunities for you to grow, then please don't let go of it. That's one thing that I would tell all freelancers. Just to give you a small example, when I started out, I started with teaching and training, but suddenly one fine day, one organization called me and said, why don't you do this content development for us? And interestingly, they thought I was ready fit for it because they had gone through my blog, which I had sneaked in into my resume. I didn't even think it would be useful. I had stopped writing that blog 10 years ago, but somehow and at that point I felt, okay, why don't I try this? Why don't I give this a chance? So there's a lot of opportunity to grow, but like she said, only up to a certain extent. Yeah. So because you are a freelancer at the end of the day. Take the initiative and then see where it takes you, see how far it takes you. So that's what I've been working on so far.
Yeah, Suresh, just we have 13 minutes, 14 minutes now.
Okay, I have one question, Rajmohan.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that we should also discuss, before you ask the next question, I would like to, this morning also I read something very interesting.
Okay.
At least 9.5 lakh people are expected to return to India from abroad, various countries.
Okay.
We have not felt that kind of a shock, but people elsewhere in other countries are completely shattered. Actually, they don't want to, they are going to return. So that means 1 million more people are going to be there, enter into the market. I don't think our market infrastructure has got that situation. This pandemic is, really, are we going to have that many freelancers? Yeah, you please go ahead. Yeah, I just want to share a thought with you.
I'm also tying into the same thing, that now that these are COVID times, right? And Melinda had brought this up earlier. We have two issues here. One is our freelancers getting jobs, and there are two ways of looking at it. I thought one was like companies would probably say, okay, we are not doing so great. One of the first people to fire off could be the freelancers. Let's not make people internally do the work, right? That's one challenge probably. The second challenge, as Rajmohan says, is more people are out of work. Maybe they all want to jump into freelancing, so you get more competition. Or it could be other way that companies may think, look, I'm paying too much of salary. Why not remove a few people and get freelancers for the next 6 months before the situation becomes more stable or something like that, right? So what I want to know from both of you is, how do you perceive the situation in your own area? What are the challenges now? What seem to be the opportunities now? And how do you see this going?
In terms of COVID, yes?
Yeah, because of COVID, right? How has situation changed?
Yeah, so COVID situation has changed drastically. So COVID has actually been the biggest lesson for me in terms of my freelance career, because one day I had a job, the next day I didn't. I didn't. It's just as simple as that. So on March 15th, I came back from work, worked 8 hours, spoke to my colleagues, said bye. March 16th, I didn't have a job. It was not that they, negated my contract or anything. I was still on contract, just that I didn't get any work after that. No work came to me after that. It's not that they're going to say, okay, that's it, your contract's done. I'm still employed technically, just that I don't have money coming in or work coming in. Yeah. So that will be the case for a lot of freelancers. I personally know 40 to 50 people who were stuck on the same boat when COVID struck. Yeah. So you maybe 1 or 2 weeks you're optimistic, 1 month you're optimistic, you're like, okay, this will end, but it doesn't, it didn't. So then you have to think about other options. And like Suresh rightfully said, for every organization that can't afford to keep the freelancers on board, also a very important point is that when organizations try to cut down on their expenditure, they are actually not allowed also by law to cut, and rightfully so, to cut back on the salaried employees. They are going to take down the freelancers first. You are the first set of people who will be thrown out. But like he said, there are certain organizations who will need work to be done, but cannot afford to employ full timers as well. So then those are the areas where you can go in and fill the gaps. Yeah. So like I said earlier, also I sort of wallowed around for a couple of months, and then I looked at my bank balance and cried for a bit, and then I picked myself up. I rewrote my resume, and I sent it, and I learned the importance of networking firsthand. I sent it across to as many people as I could, even strangers that I had not really spoken to at all. I sent it across. I put it on LinkedIn. Yeah, had to. And fortunately, I'm saying this because it could help people out there. Fortunately, it works. People come to you, if you are qualified, if you have the required skill set, if you have developed and kept yourself updated, then you will find work through any one of these means. It's definitely easier today than it was a couple of years ago, say, because you have a lot more channels to, push yourself for work. So as of now, I feel it's time for any freelancers in any field. As of now, the only thing you have to do is to be proactive and take the initiative to look out for work. Because if you do, then there is still a lot of scope, because employees can't afford to go in for salaried employment for a long time. All employment in a lot of major organizations is frozen right now. They cannot take in people. They cannot send out people. That's the status for as long as COVID exists. So then you can enter the picture quite so easily, ever so easily right now, if you are willing to go that extra mile, put yourself out there and look for it. That's how I see it.
So my March was pretty good. My April was also pretty good because I had sold all my April's work in March. It was the month of May that hit me very badly because April nobody was giving out any work. So it's a lot of mindfuckery when you've spent 7 years getting work on a regular basis and never had to actually go out and sell, and then suddenly one morning you're like, oh my God, I don't know what is happening. So when that happens to me, typically I do two things. First, I call my psychiatrist and she puts me back in order. And two, I look at the money I have and plan for the long term. So I'm not thinking about the next 6 months at all. So I look at my bank balance and I say, do I have money to pay rent and eat food for the next 6 months, right? The answer is typically yes. Like I've run a frugal organization and I've saved a lot. So that money I take and I put away in one bank account and say, this is going to take care of me for the 6 months. So let's work towards what we need when, say, my belief is this economy will get better. If not in 2021, at least in 2022. And I want to have what it takes to do the work well there. Which is why I went into, I started the whole works. It has been something that I've had in mind for a very long time, but because MDash was so busy, I never made the time to. And this seemed like the best time. I'm having downtime, so start another business. And what is the worst that could happen, right? You lose like 25,000 bucks in that experiment. That was money I was happy to lose. So that's one thing I did, which has taken off, right? It's opened so many opportunities to me. That's something that will keep me busy in the short term, but will also produce revenue in the long term. And at MDash, I'm hiring interns, I'm training interns, doing training, which is a lot more structured, like sitting with them, showing them how to write, that kind of stuff. So that, let's say in 6 months to a year's time, when the market needs more of me, there is more of us available together. Fortunately though, June was another mental month. Like July is the most money per month that I have made in all 7 years of my career. what happened between May and June is that people realized that COVID's not going away.
Okay.
People realized, like all of these people who paused all the work in April and said, let's see what's going on. I don't know, economy will crumble, all of that. By the time it was May, early June, they realized that we have to go on. COVID is not going away, so life has to go on. And they all started slowly getting back to commissioning work. What I have noticed is that people are less willing to part with money. So I had to cut down the rates for some clients. But the advantage is that I was always premium. So there's a lot more margin. So I took work from clients who were paying me slightly lesser than what clients would have paid me, say, 6 months ago. But touch wood, we are in a good place. Work is coming. There's work I have 2 interns now at the Wholeworks, at M-Dash. I had an intern at the Wholeworks. I'm also hiring for another position. So there is work coming.
So you should make note of that.
Yeah,
She's
I already applied. I have already applied. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So
see, what she wrote is, "Ada ponga boss."
That's it.
Yeah. So in essence, what I'm saying is, I feel like the standards have risen. What clients will expect of you are very, very high. And what they will be willing to pay is not very, very low. It's not proportionate, but it is lower than what it used to be. So there's a lot less experimentation money. So what they would ideally do is hire somebody who has demonstrated experience, will ask for more trial, will want to do a trial month and then take you on board. So those kind of things are happening. But I think that's the test of entrepreneurship, right? If that doesn't happen, then there's no fun. So I think it is still important for us to hold what our values are close. For instance, M-Dash is a B2B tech marketing company. Just because my May was bad, I didn't go ahead and say, okay, now I will write content for anybody who wants content. I still stuck to it because by the time we got to July, more and more tech companies wanted content. Okay. So figure yourself out and as much as possible be frugal and live it down is what I would think is the best strategy to get over COVID mess.
Okay, so I don't know whether any of you watched Raghuram Rajan's very first interview. Okay, he said there will be knee-jerk reactions, especially in economy like India. Okay, and this is what freelancing. I personally, of course, nowadays even designing comes under creative. Okay. Like for example, at least past 8 years, people have been telling you are creative. Why are you stuck in one job? Why are you going to wasting your time and money? Like that, there are a lot of people. But the creative cultural economy, there will be knee-jerk reactions. That is what he said. But what is going to happen? He said, wait for October. He said in March. Wait for October 2020, when the American BPO firms, whatever there is outsourced work to India, they are going to cut it off. They are very determined because they did not face this kind of a situation in their entire life, where there is this kind of a supply chain. Okay, there is suddenly because of lockdown, everything got frozen for 4 or 5 days before everybody reacted because. Most of the persons working in BPO, they can't work from home because they may not have internet at home, especially in small towns and other places. So what he said was the then real effect of pandemic. And why I'm coming back to this is in creative cultural economy. This all the entire freelancing work. And including education, he said we will see only in 2021. Very quickly, in 2 minutes, Ranjani, what do you think freelancers should do now? And so, Melinda, first I will start with Ranjani.
I think freelancers should keep at it and focus on doing good work that will place them in good light in the future. Keep at it. Continue doing work. If there's no client hiring you at the moment, then do your own personal projects. keep busy, keep your momentum going. I think I have a feeling this will work out better than we all fear that it will be.
Okay.
So yeah, so in general, not just for now, in general, please look out for your own personal financial stability and safety. Always have a safety nest from whatever income you make every month. Put a certain percentage away for the drier days, because that always helps. And that's something that's non-negotiable. So keep looking out for your personal financial stability, and do not put all your eggs in one basket. So even if you're working with a brilliant organization, keep 4 or 5 other projects at hand. I learned this the hard way during COVID. I worked with a great organization. I thought I would never need outside work at all. I don't have to go anywhere else. And then one day I didn't have anything, right? So always have multiple projects in hand. If you're a freelance, if you don't own an own business, or if you don't run your own business, try working with multiple people simultaneously. So you'll have something or the other coming in at any point of time. And constantly, please keep upskilling yourself. Those are the 3 things that I would say.
Okay, that is fantastic, Melinda. So what I will do is I will start from today. I will tweet to M Dash, the Phoneworks, and Tarkuri. Okay, I will start like this. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me conclude this by just recapturing what all of you said, and what you see here, as if you are a freelancer and watching this, one thing you have to take into account is that there is a lot of opportunity for you, whether it's COVID times or non-COVID times. Freelancers would be required. In order to grab that opportunity, there are 2 things. One is that you need to market yourself, and don't see marketing as a bad word. You need to build a brand for yourself. And second, as Melinda had also indicated, try to see how many horizontal areas are in the same space that you're doing, and try to get in there. And as Ranjani very succinctly put it, when you want to grow, think of your growth. You see what is your own natural tendency. If you want to get into an agency, if you want to become an entrepreneur, there is one growth path, and you have to plan for that. Or if you want to become or be only a freelancer, you have to see how to raise in that and get more and more, work at a higher rate, or what we could call, you have to have value added work coming to you and a premium being paid to you, so that you raise there. So these 2 paths are always available to you. And as far as both Ranjani and Melinda said, that you also need to understand your finances and how do you handle that. Both of them have had this experience of being frugal and planning. It's not like you don't eat food, but it's just that you need to plan your finances in such a way that even if you had a break of a month or 2, you still be not in such a tension that you take up something which you don't want to take up, right? So this is what we have heard from them. So I think it's an excellent thing that we heard from both of them, and it was really something coming from their real life experience, and that makes this even more interesting and relevant to all of us. So let me formally thank both Ranjani and Millie for this excellent session.
Thank you.
And as usual, please keep watching this series. We'll be having more and more such interesting speakers, but these people have definitely set a standard. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
I noticed you stopped with Millie, not it's not Melinda instead of that.
Melinda.
Melinda.
That was a lovely chat, guys. Thank you. It was great. Thank you, Ranjani, and thank you, Rajmohan and Suresh. Lovely. I had a great time.
Please keep